Well, good morning, everybody. This is Catherine Toon, and I just thought I'd hop on a bit today just to encourage and edify, help get you geared up for the day. How many of you have started your morning with kind of the latest update about the coronavirus and the fallout and the bad news and the economic stuff and all that kind of stuff, and could use a little uplifting in your perspective? So let's do that. I just got off of a kind of a group of panel on Goma, and it was really fun, and it was really interesting because to a person, we were talking about, wow, what is the focus? How do you navigate really dark things, right? There's dark stuff going on, and at the beginning, middle, and end of the day, it's all about love, and it's about the hope that love brings. It's interesting because the Word of God in Romans 5 says that hope does not disappoint, because the love of God is shed abroad in our hearts. So you wouldn't have reason to hope if love had not been shed abroad. And this is not just a message for the evangelical community or whatever, or the Christian community. It is a message for humanity, because God is a person who has shed himself abroad in the children he created in his image and likeness. So, which means if that's already a done deal, that is a finished deal. God did this when he created humanity, and he didn't ask humanity's vote. Now, we get to agree with it or not. We get to agree with it or not. And to the extent that we agree with that, we experience that. But it was God that is the one that initiated that within each and every person in humanity. So, which means that each and every person has vast hope on the inside, even if they're not connecting with it. So, the question is, wow, if I have this vast hope inside me, and but I'm not feeling it. I'm despairing. All I look around and see is darkness. I look at each and every other person, and they seem depressed, and nobody has the answers, and all of that. Then how do I connect with that? Well, that is a great question. You connect with that because you have a person inside you. You have a the Christ inside you, the hope of glory. See, because it's interesting, because Christ is inside you, and he is the hope of glory, and he is the hope for your hope. So, hope would be foundless if it weren't for a person that is bigger than any of this stuff. If hope doesn't disappoint because the love of God has been shed abroad in our hearts, then you have vast reason to hope in the place where maybe you're not connecting with it right now. And so what do? You connect with the person of love who is already in there. That love never fails. You see, Jesus is not testing the winds of the latest update on the coronavirus to figure out whether he is masterful and has an upgrade on the other side. We are those trees planted by streams of water, bearing fruit in season, who does not wither, because, right, whose leaf does not wither, because we are rooted and grounded in the person of love. And love is eternal. God is eternal, and he's made you as a being eternal with him, because you are partaking of his nature. And because of that, hope is not dependent on the winds of events, on the winds of circumstance, because hope transcends all that, because love has already transcended it, that for humanity as humanity. So your ability to hope is not connected on the latest update with the number of people who are infected with the virus, the number of deaths, and how much more extended the stay-at-home lockdown, whatever you want to call that is. That is not the foundation of your hope. The foundation of your hope is a person who's eternal, who's wild about you, by the way. God is wild about his kids. So, which means if you're wild about someone, if you are love and you created a race of children in your image and likeness, you provide for those children. One way or the other, there's an upgrade in this, and God will get you through this on the other side, not just as you went into it, but with an upgrade on the other side as we're looking to Him. If we're just so focused on the latest updates and things like that, it shrinks our capacity to connect with the one who is love, because it's looking unto Jesus who authors and finishes faith. And so if we're looking unto everything else, our faith, we're not connecting with His faith. So we get to choose to connect with the person of God, with the person of love who authored it, and who gets to finish it. See, God is not shaken by the latest bad news. He is totally convinced in the good news of the gospel. Why, his faith is solid. He knows who he is. He knows what he's done on behalf of humanity. And he knows who humanity is, created in his image and likeness. So we get to partake of that. We get to be invited to partake of that. And that is the reason for our hope. That is the reason for our hope. You know, institutions can be shaken. And I do believe this is a time of shaking. But, you know, I don't believe it's a time of shaking because God is mad and, you know, he's like tearing down things that he's mad at. It's a time of upgrade. So the church gets to arise in the fullness of who she is, as humanity gets to be embraced in the fullness of who they are, that the sons and the daughters of God are being manifested and unveiled, right? Because creation is groaning for this. So I do believe there is a groaning, and I believe an answer to the groaning, which is really on the inside of us as creation as well, that we are manifested, and then we get to become conduits through which love is released, hope is released, and the water level rises for every single person. See, this is our opportunity. You know, so many times we're like, oh, I want to go out and do something great for God, and then we get hit with something hard and we're like, oh God, what happened? What's wrong? And you know, I mean, the truth is stuff happens. I mean, we do live in a fallen world. Ding, da, ding, ding. But we get to be an answer to that. We get to point to the one who is above all that, and who is not just above all it looking down, who is above it, but in us, in the midst of our darkness, to pull us up so that we get to operate on his level. We get to be that reason that people see, wow, there's something bigger. There's something real about this Jesus person. That this person is not just a stained glass window, or this person is just not what I learned, in my Sunday school class, but he's a person I'm one with, and he is the life and the light of men, and all are included in that invitation to partake of his divine nature and be all that we are called to be. This is a time when we get to be unveiled. So if it is true, it gets to be unveiled. You see, truth does not take an opinion poll of what the latest opinion is about what reality is. Truth is truth outside of of appearance, but also impacts appearance as we connect with truth and speak that truth. And that truth is all wrapped up in the person of love, in the person of God, in the Christ in you, the hope of glory, so that we have vast hope. Why? Because you're being unveiled. This is your time where glory is being unveiled. You know, when we look at how God has interacted with over the eons, you know, when the church was an early church, and the church was being, you know, ridiculous persecuted. Listen, we're not being thrown to the lions right now. Hallelujah. We're not being lit on fire so that we can be we can illuminate the hallways for a Caesar. Okay. Persecution is looking a little different, with people just bash you on Facebook. But what I'm saying is, the time for us to be glorious in our particular set of circumstances, that we can be unveiled and we can speak an answer. That the church is not the answer, but the church points to the one who is the answer, the one who is and was and shall be, the Christ in us, the hope of glory, the one who loved us and gave himself up for us, the one who gives rather than demands. And humanity is in crisis. Humanity is hurting. So what is God's response? It's like, I'm in you. I'm in you. I'm in you. Let me unveil myself to you as in you, as being the big A answer that came before the little p problem of the fall, because I'm such an answer that I swamp that out in myself. And that's where that peace comes, that hope that does not disappoint, that causes you to rest in the middle of a hurricane, that causes you to rest in the middle of a shaking. And I believe the Lord is shaking, that the shaking is going on. But the good thing about shakings is that, what shouldn't have been there to begin with gets to be shaked off, and we all get upgraded, because God is able to take care of his kids in the midst of calamity. He really is. And we're not going to get to the other side of life when our human body is peeled back and we're spirit to spirit and we're seeing him for as he is, and we're seeing ourselves for as we are. We're not going to get to that and say, God, where were you? We might get to that and say, dang, I wish I'd seen where you were, because that would have ministered peace and hope in that presence right in the midst, that you can be that strong, unshakable oak of righteousness, a display of his splendor in the midst of the gales that are going on. See, it's all about being rooted and grounded in love. Right? That you may know him, that you know him. It's that intimate knowledge where you are feeding and partaking, that causes you to rest, that gives you peace, where you can receive love in action because he's the one who loves you and gave himself up for you. And then you can be a conduit through which love is in action for someone who needs it, for someone who has gotten so blindsided and so overwhelmed by the bad news that they've gotten disconnected, or maybe they just haven't ever awakened to the good news that is realer than anything else. You see, people are looking, and so this is our time to say, like, wow, what is real? What is true? What is authentic? And you can speak to that, because you're already rooted and grounded and fixed in the one who loved you and gave himself up for you. And that brings peace. That brings hope. And that brings answers in the midst of a place where there's no answers, right? Because the answer is not the church. The answer is Christ in the church and Christ in his kids. And he gets to minister himself. And so, Father, I just pray just for people connecting and settling in to the truth and the depths and the glory of Christ in them, that he's greater than all these things that are coming against us, that God is for us, then who can be against us? What can be against us? That we get to be all that we are created to be, in union with the one who loved us and gave himself up for us, and to be a display of his splendor at a time when there's ugly all around. We get to be conduits of hope. We get to be conduits of peace. And Father, I just thank you for undergirding that in each and every person, that there's actually joy on the other sides, and there's upgraded grades, because you are getting unveiled in the midst of storms. You're getting conformed into the image of love himself, the image of Christ. And Father, I just thank you for peace. I just thank you for hope. I just thank you for joy. And Father, I just thank you for creative solutions for every need that is represented, that we're operating from the place of God in us. We're operating from the place and perspective that we're one with the person of love. Good morning, Randolyn, and that we're able to be ministers of the gospel. Oh my goodness, which is actual good news. People need good news. They need good news because there's plenty of bad news. And if I can just, make a suggestion, keep in touch with what's going on, because we do need to be informed of the things that are necessary, and we do need to be to be able to speak to the problem. We need to kind of know what the problem is. Good morning, Kimberly. But don't sit in front of the TV or whatever news, because I'm telling you, that's not the only news that there is. The only news is in the 24-hour news that has political slants from any direction you look at it, okay? The left, the right, the middle, whatever, they're going to have slants, and they're also operating from the limitation of what is in the seen realm. That you are one with the one who loved you and gave himself up for you, the eternal one, the one who is spirit, Christ in you. So which means that we're greater than the sum of our parts. We're greater than the news that we are seeing, because we're carrying something eternal. And now I don't, so be focusing on Jesus, be informed, but be focusing on Jesus so you can speak to the information that is freaking people out, that is causing people to become depressed and hopeless. I mean, and this is very real. I was ministering to someone the other day, and literally, I mean, she had already cut herself. She's precious. Oh my God, beautiful daughter of God, but just in a lot of despair. And she had already cut herself. And, I was trying to talk her through. And I'd recommended a crisis hotline, and she literally took a photo of the online crisis thing. And she was 50. There are 54 people ahead of her on the suicide hotline. So I'm saying people are hurting. And so this is the time, there's such a need, and there's a need right where you are, that you can release the hope and the reason for your hope, right? And it's not hope because, well, when I die, I get to heaven. It's hope because you're one with one who is seated in heavenly places, and you're seated in heavenly places in him and you and him. That union is already a done deal, so that you get to speak from that place, and you get to think with his mind. He really does have creative solutions. If you have the mind of Christ in you, that as you connect with the person of Christ in you, he has creative solutions for your groceries, your toilet paper, your electric bill, your jobs, upgrades and what that looks like, answers for your children, your education, your future, all of those things. He has practical answers for that, and he wants to move through you as a practical answer, as love and action for someone else that may not have cultivated that connection. One of the beautiful things that we can do now, and we get that opportunity every day, it didn't take a crisis for this, is that we can cultivate that connection. Hi, Jill. With Christ in us, with God in us, with the person of love in us. So that we could speak to those things that don't look like love, that do not look lovely, right? We can speak to those things. We can cultivate that connection. And there's, it's the only difference is between now and before all this Corona stuff happened, is that the crises we were feeling were not universal crises, other than the human condition in general. And we weren't in the same boat in terms of just this big human crisis that swept the globe. But what I'm saying is, wow, what you've cultivated in you, and that place where you realize, wow, there really aren't external answers. It takes the facade off that somehow there are external answers. There's external conduits. I'm grateful for the external conduits we have through government, as messed up as it is, through the medical profession, as limited and flawed as it is, through different countries, as limited and flawed as they are, for our leaders, as limited and flawed as they are, all of that. But we get to partake through them. So I'm grateful for that. We're not dealing with anarchy. Isn't that awesome? But what we do have is something eternal that swamps that out. That even though you may not have a specific answer for that, God is walking humanity out in it, and in the midst of it, displaying himself to them. And that is a calling. You get that. Let me tell you, every time you encounter God and you dig deep, rooted and grounded in God, you dig deep for him and his presence, his connection, what he's saying, you are being literally upgraded, because you're being transfigured as you're looking unto Jesus, the author and finisher. You're being transfigured. So you will come out this, should you choose to accept it, with upgrades. And I feel like God is truly taking this time to shake things that can be shaken, not because he's mad but he's upgrading the entire world. Listen, if he's reconciling all things to himself, that means he gets to take advantage of the garbagey situations, right? He gets to take advantage of those so that he can display himself. Hi, Nisa. So that he can display himself and he can be the answer in the place that there are no answers. He can be that answer for us, because this storm will blow over. Listen, we've had world wars, we've had plagues, humanity has suffered crisis after crisis, and guess what? Humanity has survived. Isn't that amazing? And the Word of God does not say that the world is going to obliterate. It says actually it's a world without end. And so because of that, God intends for his humanity, his kids, to continue, but be upgraded because we are connecting with the one who is the answer, right? He really is the answer. He's not freaking out, but you know what? We can speak to that. And I'm telling you, sometimes you're going to run across things where you're like, oh my God, how do I help this person? I have no idea. And God will give you a worded season. You are more powerful than you know. You are more capable than you know. You are complete in the one who loved you and gave himself up for you. You are one with the one who is love that never fails. And you have something to say and to bring to bear for your neighbors and for people around you and for your family, to encourage, to bring hope, and to help connect them with the one who is the source and sustains and completes everything in him and draws all things to himself. This is our time to shine. It really is. You don't shine if you're in the brightest place. You shine in places that are dark, and the darkness even itself is an illusion, because God is everywhere. He's the light of men. And so where the darkness is not comprehending it, wow, we get to turn on the light. We get to speak. We get to point to the one who is that light and brings hope. We get to be love in action, and God will give you practical ways to do this for your family, and for when you're going out and grabbing that toilet paper or whatever that is. You get to be love in action. You get to be who God created you to be. You get to shine. So I hope this has been a blessing for you today. I hope this has just stirred up your faith, stirred up hope, encouraged you so that you can go around and release what you have been given. I love you guys. Be love in action today. Love you. Have a great day. Bye-bye.